trauma victims, those with mental illness or disabilities, veterans, assault survivors, immigrants, elders, youth, voiceless, marginalized members of communities deemed at risk. Public resources such as the National Public Radio Public Broadcasting Service, the National Arts Endowment, connect us to other people, give us access to our cultural heritage. We can be informed and express our ideas. We can use art therapy to adapt and regain our voices during hardship. After our administration stated seeking to remove these programs, Second Lady Karen Pence, a direct representative, claims to support art therapy. The National American Art Therapy Association has blindly endorsed Karen Pence. We must condemn this action. First, let us look at what art therapy is and why it is important. We will then see how the actions of this administration our Second Lady represents misaligns with AATA ethics and contributes to national trauma. I will then present historical evidence of the corruptive nature and ethical risks of a blind endorsement. As an artist, a future educator, and art therapist, let me share with you the ability of art therapy to heal and empower. Trauma survivors and people with chronic illnesses are among many of all ages and of all demographics who use art therapy to surpass hardship. According to the 2010 article, The Connection Between Art, Healing, and Public Health, a review of current literature by Heather Stuckley and Jeremy Noble, published by the U.S. Library of Medicine National Institutes of Health, art helps people express experiences that are too difficult to put into words, such as a diagnosis of cancer. As reported in the article Jason's Story, Breaking Barriers to PTSD Treatment on Healing.org's Personal Stories page, 440,000 of the 2.2 million Iraq and Afghanistan veterans have PTSD, nightmares, anxiety, depression, flashbacks, hypervigilance. Some are unable to receive conventional treatments. Children and the elderly may also struggle to communicate. In the article Ruth's Story at Alzheimer's.org, caregivers report that art allows Alzheimer patients to communicate with an alternative, accessible language that increases quality of life by decreasing isolation. And from personal experience, as someone who is in lockdown during a fatal school shooting, I know that art therapy helped me and my community recognize our strengths after tragedy. It is why I stand here today. And while Pence has acknowledged the importance of art therapy, we must question her sincerity. People question if an administration seeking to gain control by Mr. Trump's barring CNN, the New York Times, and other outlets from a press conference, according to NPR, truly wants to relinquish power to people. I do not believe it. According to PolitiFact.com, LGBTQ community leaders are concerned the Vice President, Mr. Pence, believes people can be cured through conversion therapy based on its 2000 website stating, Congress should oppose any effort to put in gay and lesbian relationships on an equal legal status with heterosexual marriage, and Congress should oppose any effort to provide protection from anti-discrimination laws similar to those extended to women and ethnic minorities. In an interview, he cited Mrs. Pence as highly influential on his beliefs. The AATA has not pushed for Karen Pence for answers. We cannot ignore inherent contradictions and unanswered questions. She need not agree with the life choice of others. She needs only to save lives when possible, like a doctor under the Hippocratic Oath, and should it stand, like the AATA. Knowing these inconsistencies, we must examine history to determine the risks of unquestioned authority. Our public education system throughout history was manipulated to benefit those in power and shows what can happen even under subtle influence. What are things that many students are unaware of, aside from sex ed? The Japanese internment and compulsory boarding schools for Hispanic and First Nations people after mass genocide seemed worth a few words. The American eugenics movement and its inspiring influence on Hitler and the Holocaust, according to Garland E. Allen of PMC National Library of Medicine, was worth none at all. Something as simply blatant as schools being racially segregated until the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education, according to teachingtolerance.org online magazine. Corruption is designed to spread. According to Jessica Stone, professor of education at Western Washington University, before the states adopted the Common Core Educational Standards May 12, 2015, perpetually needy states were basically bribed with financial aid. Government tightened its influence on teachers and students, detached from processes they are directly affected by. Many know firsthand our experiences reduced to formulaic standards we failed to meet as passive byproducts of systems we have no voice in. Now imagine providing conversion services. According to the British Medical Journal, December 7, 1996, after World War II, when the Nazis committed mass genocide and performed deplorable, mutilating, undignifying experiments on its persecuted minorities, world leaders gathered in Nuremberg, Germany to ensure such inhumanity would never occur again. So became the Nuremberg Code of 1947. Later, after we did not learn the 1964 Declaration of Helsinki as on the World Medical Association site and the 1997 Belmont Report, look up the Tuskegee Study, as on Office for Human Research Protection's HHS.gov. These ethical codes have 4 basic overarching principles: respect of persons through uncoerced choice, autonomy, justness, and beneficence to participants, and to do no harm. Is the purpose of treatment to serve a social construct? So I ask, is conversion therapy really debatable in Mr. Pence's eyes? Most importantly, is it debatable in ours? We must not allow our administration to warp the philosophy of therapy to suit their agendas. Neutrality is silence. Silence is approval. Therapy and education is not indoctrination of a server's personal ethics. And there is potential for corruption. The AATA should directly question Karen Pence until she proves she is not a profiteer who will make a business out of suffering. Art therapy is an all-inclusive service. Karen Pence needs to be completely transparent about her platform, because history shows us patterns of corruption that are plausible now. Hoping to be heard, we work to be independent despite our own hardships. We are all capable of surmounting those when we are given adequate resources to do so. So I ask, can people really be independent without having autonomy over their own lives? Can people have true autonomy over their own lives when they lack chances to speak and to be heard? I urge you to call, write, tell the American Art Therapy Association, local government officials, the Senate, to demand Pence disavows publicly any policies and activities jeopardizing the well-being of all, because the people being directly affected are being ignored. This is a symptom of corruption. Together, by speaking up for PBS, NPR, the NEA, and for transparency, we can empower survivors rather than create victims, servants of a system.